Good morning, everybody. My name is Ken Kirschbaumer. I'm the co-executive director and editorial director for the Sports Video Group. We are a trade association with two divisions, one in the US called the original, if you will, SVG, and then in Europe we have SVG Europe. If you want to learn more about both organizations and get our daily email newsletters on sports production, please visit sportsvideo.org and also SVG Europe. We have a great half hour to spend here today with two leaders in the industry. We have Alex and Ali from Formula E and with Perform DAZN. I keep wanting to say DAZN because I'm an American, but DAZN. And we're here to talk, just kind of get their take on technologies, what's going on with their companies as far as how they approach new technologies, a little bit of OTT, also VR, HDR. So I wanted to kind of start with some opening statements. Alex, we'll start with you as far as about 4 minutes or so, just what's going on with DAZN, and I know it's been a busy couple of years for you. So maybe start 2 years ago and give kind of the update on where we are today.
So I was saying to Ken before I came in the room that it was quite interesting about 2 years ago when we were starting to buy content for DAZN. And I'm not sure if you know what DAZN is, but it's the first sort of fully OTT service for, I think, for any sort of really focused sports pay TV solution in any market. So we launched in Japan, Germany, Austria, Switzerland last August, and we launched in Canada at the back end of July. But probably about 2 years ago, when we were starting to buy rights and acquire rights for the 4 territories that we launched in, there was certainly an element of entirely sure what you're talking about. It was easier to say we're the Netflix of sports because people generally understood what that may or may not mean. But we were very much a multi-sport proposition, and we were focused on acquiring properties that were premium and that were only wholly available on this platform. And it was very important for us to be across multiple devices very quickly, so we had a huge technical investment on the platforms that we worked on. We needed to immediately be at the level of Netflix and Amazon Prime, that you could switch on your TV, your console, your Fire TV stick, and it'd be there, and it would work immediately. And fast forward to last year, we'd launched. I think most people were kind of, how's it going? You've been sort of going for about 2 months now. How are things? Is it awful? Have you got no subscribers? And there was an element because we were very much in the infancy in the first few months. One market was doing well, one market was still, we were struggling with.
You didn't have Formula E?
Didn't have Formula E, no. And then we're now here today, and I think the interesting thing is we are now at a point where all the rights holders and federations and agencies very much know what the product is. We've acquired more properties in the last few months, and we can't publicly talk about subscribers, but we are doing okay. I think we've gone through some growing pains, and now we're at a point where the customer in our key markets know what we're about.
So what are some of the key properties that you currently have that you guys are most proud of and least proud of? But
No. So we in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, we have the Premier League exclusively. We've got La Liga exclusively, Serie A, the NBA, NFL. We've got a strong package of fight sports. So we had the Mayweather-McGregor fight exclusively in Germany and Austria. And then in Japan, we're the exclusive rights holder for the J-League. So we acquired the J-League as part of a 10-year plan. And alongside the J-League, we've got all the major European soccer leagues and some really strong North American sports and baseball as well. So immediately in those markets and Canada with the NFL, we wanted to be at the top table. We wanted to immediately be seen to be a serious player and immediately be a fan first, because fundamentally the content made it fan first.
And as far as what's the price? How do you work on the pricing models? And obviously a lot of different cultures and countries and economies.
Yes, so I won't break it down by price per market, but we tend to work on a 3 Big Mac rule. So if it's about 3 Big Mac in each market, that's how our pricing is based. Because we want it to be affordable. We want it to be very much based on the principles of you get a month free, you can cancel at the end of the month, and you can cancel at the end of any month. So you're not locked into 12-month or 24-month subscription plans. There's a lot of flexibility. That brings risk. But again, we've seen at the end of the football seasons last year, we saw some churn, which we expected, but we also saw they came back, and they came back earlier than expected, and some stayed. So we feel that long term, because you're competing, well, you're now in a market where the customer knows what Spotify is, they know what Netflix is, they're used to paying €10, $10, £10. So we tend to be in that bracket.
Right. So just to, and maybe Ali can follow up on this question. Let's take you mentioned the churn. So let's say, I'm guessing in Japan, for example, with the J League, that you can see spikes during the season and then a drop in the off season. So is the challenge there figuring out how to have a programming strategy that kind of keeps them glued in? And I guess, Ali, for you, the same thing. You have a season, and then sort of, your goal is to, if people are signing up, to keep them engaged. So how do you kind of deal with that? Is my premise true?
No, your premise is true. You obviously face a challenge at the end of any major property in any season. You're therefore trying to create 12 months of good content. Japan actually is probably the market where we'll face the risk of churn will be vastly reduced, because you're still in the midst of the European football seasons when the J League ends in the next month. And so you tend not to have, we don't anticipate the same drop-off. There will be drop-off. We saw at the end of the NBA finals a drop-off. We saw at the end of the NFL season a drop-off, because there's a solid base of customers. But what we also see then is, we can see very clearly brackets of North American sports fans or soccer fans or motorsport fans or boxing fans, and they tend to cross over quite well as well.
So Ali, from your standpoint, maybe first a quick update on Formula E. I mean, it's been, 4 years now? So.
Yeah, we've been going for 5 years, but 3 seasons. So thank you very much, Ken, Alex. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for coming to our session this morning. Formula E is an all-electric city centre racing series, which is owned and operated by Formula E Holdings, which is the company I work for, but ultimately is one of the FIA properties. So we sit in the same subset as World Rally, as Formula One, as World Endurance. And we really set about, our vision at the beginning was to make electric vehicles accessible. And we were going to do that through 2 mechanisms. One was developing technology and being, I suppose, the R&D hub for the electric car industry. And the second one is to change people's perceptions of electric cars. And so we drive, or we race around the world. Our season starts in usually October, November, December, and it finishes in either July or August. This season, we're starting with a doubleheader in Hong Kong. Then we go on to Marrakesh and then to Latin America, where we've added both Sao Paulo and Santiago as new venues for Formula E this year. We have Mexico City, and then we hop across to Europe, and we have a compact season, but we start with Rome, which is a new race, go on to Paris, on to Berlin, and then finish off in Zurich, which is also a new race. And then we're bookend at the end of the season back in the Americas, in North America, with a stunning race in Brooklyn overlooking the Statue of Liberty and Manhattan. And then we finish the season in Montreal. So I think the question you had about frequency is a really interesting one, Ken, because we've struggled with frequency, because when you're looking to race on tracks, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of you phone up, you come to a commercial deal with the track, and you book the track. When you're dealing with city centres, you're dealing with environments that are very fluid. You have events that have been there for hundreds of years. You have transportation challenges, and we have a need to close down roads. And so the championship itself is condensed in a 1 day. If you think about motorsport, you think about a four-day event. We've condensed it into a 1 day event, and then we've created a 45-minute race. And that's very, very different. So it's very snackable, and it's very much targeted at the new generation, the generation that are going to be the electric car buyers of tomorrow. So this session is very, very important for us, because we are a sport that we're operating in a traditional space, but we have tried to reposition motorsport to aim it at a much younger audience. And so to actually connect with the younger audience, you need to be in far more places than you did in the past, where we could have done a rights deal with a BBC, an ITV, a Channel 5. Now you need to be far more open to having creative deals which suit your local market. So that might be DAZN in a certain market. It may be TV Asahi in a different market. And you need to think about whether you have a need to aggregate, whether you have the opportunity to create the relationship directly with the customer, or probably how you do both most effectively.
Well, I guess there's the phrase digital native, which refers to kids who have grown up with digital devices, so they're considered digital native because it's native to them. I guess in a weird way, you are a digital native sports league, one of the few probably at this point, because 4 years ago, that was when this all started, really kind of blew up.
It's been quite interesting because we came out with a concept which was, we've all grown up watching sport in a very sedentary format. So you sit and you watch and you consume sport. Now the way that the next generation views sport is multi-screened. So they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook. And we came up with a concept called Fan Boost, which if you're a traditional sport, you will probably come out in a cold sweat. But the philosophy behind Fan Boost was to involve our fans. They vote through Twitter, through Facebook, through our website for the favorite driver, and that driver gets, or three drivers get fan boosts during the race, which means they get an extra power which they can use to overtake or to protect against an overtaking maneuver. And what it allows us to do is to really be far more connected with our fan base than traditional sports will be. And funnily enough, we've had no pushback from the drivers. The drivers see fan boosts as a competition like qualifying. And so the type of content that they create, they share, the conversations they have, I think are at the forefront of sport. And I think it's the way that sport should be and the sport needs to be, because ultimately the entertainment industry is moving in that direction, and sport is just an iteration of the entertainment industry.
That sounds like getting an extra penalty kick. But doing fan voting, and then the team that gets the most votes gets an extra penalty kick. But what it brings, you're mentioning they're engaged. The drivers understand the game, so if they can drive engagement with their fans through doing X, Y, and Z, they therefore get the boost. So they look at it as a competition within a competition, I guess. Yeah,
absolutely. And drivers are the most competitive people you'll ever come across in your life. So we have a lot of fun with it. We're looking at how do we evolve. I agree with you. I think it would be absolutely crazy to have a fan vote for a penalty. Football's an incredibly well-constructed game. It doesn't need that. What we've tried to do is engineer more overtakes. So we have around about 73 overtakes per race in a 45-minute slot. So if you like racing, you will have an intensity of performance, and what we see it is probably the 2020 version of cricket to motorsport.
Gotcha. So for both of you, you mentioned the casual fan and the hardcore fans. I'm guessing that for you, the same thing. The hardcore racing fans, I guess they're gearheads, although there's less gears, I guess, in an electric car, but same amount of gears. But they find you. So how do you kind of balance the hardcore fans, casual fans, and?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because we obviously target motorsport fans, but we can be quite Marmite in that if you enjoy the roar of the engine, you enjoy the smell of the fumes that you have in a traditional motorsport track. We're more like Tron in terms of it's a very futuristic sound. And so we've spent a lot of time in terms of bringing in the new motorsport fans of tomorrow. And we spend a lot of time targeting sports enthusiasts, so people that are into racing. And what we're finding is slowly the motorsport fans are getting more engaged with the championship and getting involved. And ultimately the tribes that we're bringing with us. So one of the real strengths that we've got as a championship is manufacturers. So we now have 10 manufacturers involved with the championship. We announced during the summer Mercedes and Porsche are complementing Audi, BMW, DS, Renault, Neo, Jaguar, Mahindra, and Faraday Future. So, and we've got many other active conversations. So those traditional car brands or racing brands bring with them huge tribes, people that have been supporting Jaguar through numerous iterations of their involvement in racing. And so it gives us huge opportunities to connect with them in more meaningful ways. And I think that's where digital and that's where OTT propositions come in, because you can be far more specific in how you super serve what we call tribes.
So you didn't get stuck in the classic conundrum 3 or 4 years ago of saying, how do we convert, if you will, F1 fans to become Formula E fans? You didn't engage in that kind of, I mean, obviously you want to have some of them coming over anyway, but you didn't drive yourself crazy by focusing on the F1 fans and NASCAR fans and the traditional fans. Say, you know what, let's go a new way.
Our belief is they'll come over time, and we're seeing that they are coming over time, but what we are finding is that we are attracting a much younger audience, an audience that might not have traditionally gone into motorsports. And we've done that by being far more active in social. You know, social is very key, very core to what we do, and how we build and develop the product in terms even of our DNA, in terms of user-generated content, what you can film, what you can post yourself. We have a very laissez-faire attitude to that, in terms of we encourage people to get involved, immersive, and to have fun with our sport, because that's what it's about. It's about having fun, it's engaging, then they will become fans.
Right, sure. So Alex, what I find interesting about your challenge, and maybe you could talk about the casual fans versus the hardcore fans, and also just getting people aware of who it is, because within every market, most people don't know who Perform is, so that doesn't even register. Not like, oh, it's a new service from BT, it's a new service from BBC, NBC, ESPN, but also DAZN, they got to figure out what it is and get it. So how do you kind of go about driving awareness of what is you're all about?
I mean, one of the key areas for us to launch in a market was that we had to really understand the audience that we were going after. Our chief marketing officer was the ex-Netflix global chief marketing officer. Really tough job. But what he picked up on straight away was that sport is actually a lot easier than developing and bringing a new brand drama and trying to acquire a customer in that way, or a new comedy, because that's untested. You know, a Premier League fan is a Premier League fan, is a Man United fan. If we're the place, they should come. And therefore, when we were looking at the audience brackets, we had some certainty that as long as the product was of high level, and immediately the user, the customer that came in was, felt it was a really strong product, and that the offering was exactly what was expected, which was live sport, and it was in their living room. They could lean back, they had it on their phone, but fundamentally that was really important for us to know that we could bring those fans in. And also, Perform had and still owns a number of big global portals. So we own goal.com, so we own the biggest football site in the world, and we own the biggest sports portal in Germany. And these matter because they're coming to the service. They are already, particularly in Germany, they were big NFL base, a big NBA base, a big European soccer base, and therefore we were talking to that customer, and we've been talking to that customer for 5 years, 5 years plus. So we understood volumes and traffic, and that makes a big difference the way that we then acquired rights in the markets we're in.
So you mentioned the churn factor, which I guess is something everybody in the audience will face. So is your advice? What is your advice on how to deal with the churn factor? How to stomach it on a daily basis and a monthly basis? Do you just kind of ride those waves, understanding that churn is what it is?
No, we spend a huge amount of time stressing about churn and looking at churn factors and trying to work out the balance over the season and understand why a fan comes in and why it leaves. And one of the things we picked up on very quickly was we needed to educate our users that we were a living room product, because their perception was OTT as a mobile phone and a tablet or a desktop, and actually, and that fan generally stayed for a shorter period. And so when we were looking at the life cycle of our user base, if we could get them onto the Apple TV and the Roku device and the Fire TV device, if we could get them onto those devices within the first few weeks, it made a big difference, because then they were going to use the service. And again, I think a lot of the entertainment industry found the same principles, that once it moved from the phone, the desktop, into the living room, then your audience base will stay with you. Mm-hmm.
So one of the big themes of this show on the floor that a lot of people are grappling with respect to OTT services is what's the relationship between a league's own service, the services of their rights holders, the services of someone like you who maybe aggregate numerous ones. I mean, not to talk rumors, but I heard that maybe part of the issue with F1, which ESPN has the rights for free for TV, but part of the issue with NBC might have been that NBC was concerned that they couldn't get the digital rights to the races, and that F1 would be launching OTT services within the U.S., so therefore NBC wasn't comfortable with that. Again, this is all rumors, so please. But so what is this mix of how people make their decision making, and what's your take, Alex, as far as the benefits of being bundled in with EPL and J League? And
I mean, Perform Group service managed and run a number, and still do a number of federation managed services. So we handled Tennis TV for a number of years. We had FEI TV for a number of years. We did a lot with Matchroom. We did a huge amount with a number of leagues and federations in this space, and we still do with a few. Our belief was that the audience is capped at that level because you're trying to protect a pay TV audience or free-to-air audience, and therefore your instinct, therefore, is not to market it too heavily. I don't want to ruffle the feathers of a broadcaster because of my marketing of this service. The challenge, and I don't think we've got it completely right yet. I think we are still balancing between creating a very sophisticated service with multiple layers and data integration, and having, which we can do, and we've done for a number of years, between having a service that a fan just instinctively knows how to use it and is not confused by it and just gets it. But there is a balance. And I think we look at how you would look at it, which is, well, does it matter now that you've got, and because it's expensive to build the data layers, the multi-camera angles into your service, it costs a lot of money, and that return on the investment for a number of federations has been lengthy, but it's then really challenging because you've now got an audience, really core avid, the tribes as you call them, we call them avid fans, and their expectation is that, well, that's what I want. I'm used to getting all this data sent to me and multiple camera angles and this and this, and when it's removed from them, they're very vocal because they're used. That's what they pay a premium for.
I was going to say, Ken, I think it's really horses for courses. I think the opportunity to have your own OTT platform is great. You're in control of every element, from how the fan consumes it, but most importantly in terms of the data, understanding what is sticky, what isn't sticky, what are your fans, their entry points, their exit points. You can learn a lot about your product by having that control. We've chosen to go with an aggregated solution in terms of, on Friday we announced that we have a partnership across 54 territories in Europe with Eurosport. And it's a really interesting deal because it's got a mixture of live and guarantees with live, so our product's getting incredibly high production support from Eurosport. It also has an element of free-to-air exposure through highlights and delayed programming. But I think the most pertinent point is the Eurosport Player, which they've spent a huge amount of time in terms of investing in to support their Olympics investments. And when I talk about us targeting a sports enthusiast audience, there can be no better home for us than Eurosport, the home of the Olympics. So we thought long and hard about that. We thought long and hard about bundling our digital rights in with our traditional linear rights. We felt for us it helped in terms of there's a relationship between the two, and that we could really drive the fan base and build the fan base by working. And also, it's as Alex said, one of the benefits working with an aggregator is that you can learn from other sports. You can learn, across much quicker. The technology advancement can be much quicker, and I think there'll always be this challenge between, do you invest it in yourself and own your own customer, or do you work together with partners? And it's really whether you can get the right partnership model, which gives you that transparency, that understanding of your customer, because that is the absolute key point moving forward, is understanding customers, being able to service your customers, and to be able to build long and lasting relationships with your fans.
So Rob Shaw was here yesterday from Facebook, and he mentioned how, when I said, Facebook's role in the industry, he sees Facebook as a distributor, and I think Facebook would say the same thing, which, if you take what the word distributor means, that means that Facebook is not like, they're not a channel, but that owns the content, but they're more like a cable operator or a satellite operator that distributes the content, which therefore would mean that, I know they've made some plays for content. Where do you see Facebook and Amazon fitting into the broader equation? I mean, are they a competitor with you for rights, or do you think that they will be a distributor where you'll sit there and say, well, let's work with Facebook to use them to distribute some of our rights?
Yes, in some respects they are a competitor. I mean, we recent bid for the IPL, and they were part of the same bidding process. So I can't sit to you and say no, we're never competing with Facebook. But but we also probably, Facebook's one of our biggest partners. Goal.com is the biggest publisher of content, soccer content for Facebook. So we work very, very closely. On DAZN, we spend a huge amount promoting to our customers on Facebook and utilising that platform, and using a broad variety of social media platforms and portals. And for us, when we sort of look at the competitive landscape, I think we're in a transitionary period. We would never say that pay TV is going to die or it's going to end, and there's a huge customer base that's not going to migrate, and it's a different sort of equation. I think it's then around, well, where's the audience? And the stats just don't lie. The audience is on Facebook, and it's going through those portals, and it's the same with Amazon. There's a huge audience base that's now going through Amazon Prime, and they can link the two. They might have different motivations to go into a market than maybe Facebook do, and you can't really bracket us all in the same element. I think we principally look at particularly Facebook and Twitter as amplifiers of our reach and our content, and supporters of us.
Ali, from your perspective, where do you see Facebook fitting in?
I think Facebook and Instagram are probably the two distribution channels that have grown most over the last 18 months. I think all rights holders will be working with them because it's, as Alex says, it's where the eyeballs are. I think there's challenges with the platform in terms of user experience and having a richer user experience. But the one thing I know is that Facebook have challenged the norm in everything they've approached. So I do see them as here to stay. I think the IPL process and tender process was an indication that they're coming in and they're very, very serious about sport. And I think the one aspect that we're very, very lucky with is live sports is incredibly sticky. So it attracts customers, it attracts tribes, and I think Facebook will be part of a mix. How it all pans out, I think it's anyone's guess, because in 18 months' time we'll be sitting here and there'll be something else or a new iteration. Will Twitter come back? How will Snapchat respond to Instagram stories? There's how do Amazon come into the market in a more meaningful way? Do Netflix come into the market? How do traditional broadcasters respond? It's a fascinating place to be, and I think it's very, very exciting for the industry because it gives rights holders so many different opportunities. I mean, I was marketing director of the Scottish Rugby Union years ago, and we had two options from a broadcast point of view. We had BBC and we had STV, which is the Scottish version of ITV. And really, if you didn't have a deal with either of those two broadcast organizations, you weren't on TV. And so what I think a lot of the digital platforms allow you to do as a rights holders now is to have a TV product at a very, very low cost, which you wouldn't necessarily have had in the past. So I think it's good for sports. It's creating much more space for sports that maybe aren't the NBAs or the Premier Leagues or the IPLs. And it's going to be interesting to see how people navigate them in different ways.
So the other rumor, because we'll just talk rumors, is that I read that maybe Netflix will get the F1 work as their streaming provider for that. So Ollie, not leaving that aside, but let's say, for example, you didn't have the Eurosport deal, and Facebook came in and said, or Netflix, and said, hey, we win the bid, we're the highest bidder. Would you feel comfortable in an environment where you're relying just on an over-the-top, or not over-the-top, but as a streaming service? Or would you still want to have the traditional media, or all of it, have everything?
Do you know, it's looking at the market, because no one size fits all. And I think we had the conversation about some of the technical challenges in a market like India. Just in terms of streaming, there is challenges still, just with infrastructure challenges. So I think you can't have a bold statement. All I would say is that we will have a mix. Facebook will be part of that mix. And so will the other providers. But we're delighted with our European deal with Eurosport, and we look forward to seeing what we can do on the player and giving a much, much higher, richer experience to fans. And I think that's the important part, is you can't just stream now. The competition for streaming and for eyeballs is huge. So it's how do you improve the functionality? And that is going to be the key area that I think from the tribes and from the heavy fans, that's going to be where businesses are spending much more over the coming years.
Now we had the one of those challenge, and along those lines, I guess one of the beauties of broadcast, obviously, is you can reach a lot of people without having to have individual sessions. And the worst thing that could probably happen is if the World Cup next year final was only streamed, the world's internet would come to a crashing halt. It'd be a sub SD quality stream because of the overwhelmed servers. We saw this issue happen with the McGregor-Mayweather fight, where there were some issues in the U.S. where they had to delay the fight for 20 minutes because of some problems with the pay processing, and also there's some issues with the streaming quality again. Game of Thrones had the issues in the U.S. when they crashed out their servers. That's one of the big challenges that you all face as far as maintaining a quality service online. So what are some of the steps you take behind the scenes to ensure a quality experience where your fans are engaged and having a good one? Because I think did you have some issues with the Bundesliga? Sorry, now I'm just going to have more rumors, but
no, not with the Bundesliga. We did when we the JD launched the first weekend. We had some issues with sign up, and it is one of the biggest technical challenges is that you're bringing in a big base, and they'll come in 2 minutes before. Exactly. And I think I don't know the in-depth details of the McGregor issues, but I do think that was one of the problems they faced, was the surge in demand. And we had whoever McGregor, and a few of us may have been awake at 5 a.m, fingers crossed, praying, and it was fine and it worked. And because you've got to basically plan. And I think one of the areas that we shouldn't underestimate what we had to put in over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the back-end technologies and the investment with the supply chain, working with best in breed. It was tens and tens of millions of investment, not on the back-end product and the servicing, because it's a challenging space. But I think people have got very short memories of TV and SD and HD, and they have short memories about the cable and satellite. And every technology goes through a transition period. I do feel very confidently that a lot of the areas that we've faced, we've not seen them again, or we've had to put extra measures in, or purely cash. It's just we've had to put more money into those areas and work to plan a bit better as well of when we think a surge is going to come in, and you hope that then the customer, and I think the customer does inherently now believe a huge base, and it's not even under 30. I think you can go under 40, and even they get it. They got the music industry. They now understand that you have a music streaming service. You got a very small percentage of people that would go to record shop or would download a track now, and that transition happened in 5 years, and that had its problems, and it went through its growing pains, and naturally the servers do crash, but cameras blow out, and people forget to book things, and there's a whole supply chain that can go wrong. Yes. I think we're fairly confident that as a business, we'll ride them out in the most efficient way we can.
So I wanted to close out on a topic not on our list. That's okay. Piracy. Because I think, if I'm anybody who's a disconnected fan or wants to sign in, they go in to see a pay portal and they say, okay, what are their options? And if they don't have an option to sign up for free, which you guys have, they'll say, well, now I'm going to steal it. So that's instinctive. That's this generation. So does having a 1 month free get rid of that? Because at least you know that they're going to just sign up and get some information on them?
We think undoubtedly so. We think we could see it in Germany We've seen it a little bit in Japan. We've definitely seen it in Canada, where that month free, that ability to have a product as well. And again, I've used the music analogy of music had a huge piracy issue. It needed to go through a transitionary period and had to make it more affordable. And that's probably one of the the key factors of why do people go to piracy. Well, they go to piracy because it's expensive, and asking a customer to pay 40, 50, 60, 100 plus is for sport is a big ask. It's a big ask now when they're paying $10 for Netflix. We are in a slightly different space, and they're paying $10 for Spotify, and you're asking them to spend 40, 50 plus. For sport, there is obviously a need to the premium nature of sport, and I think you can push the price point up in comparison to these other entertainment mediums, but it definitely influences piracy, and I don't underestimate the quality of the piracy that's now available. That's it's not hard to find, and it's not finding a dodgy website.
No, it's a very good user experience. It looks like,
it's a good
not
box.
that I know, but I mean, it looks,
Yeah.
for the things I've seen it demonstrated at CES with some of the copyright protection people, because I won't steal anything because I'm part of the industry, but it looks like iTunes, and you could actually be fooled by it and think, oh, this is a legit site, and no, it's not. So, Ali, as far as piracy, how do you kind of grapple with that?
I think it's a good point, Ken, and it's a point for the whole industry. And I think, as Alex says, it's staying one step ahead from a technology point of view. I think pricing, ultimately, in terms of the more we move down skinny bundles, the differential and the advantages of piracy dwindle, and I think that's what we've seen in the music industry. We've seen it becoming more affordable, and as a consequence, piracy reduces over time. But we have to be mindful of it. We're an industry that relies on our rights, and it's important that we get fair value for those rights, and that we're able to give a fair service to our fan bases.
So now looking ahead the next 2 or 3 years, there's new services like obviously VR is still percolating around, having some issues with getting the headsets out there to people, and the screens are still not probably high enough resolution to give it a really comfortable, headache-free experience. There's obviously HDR, which Apple has rolled that out. Apple's also going to get the augmented reality, which is kind of very cool as well.
Yep.
And then there's 4K, 8K. So how do you kind of look at the technology roadmap ahead of you guys? And
Well, I would say VR for us is probably the most exciting because it goes with the same theme as Fan Boost. It's about participation. It's about getting more immersive. It's improving the customer experience. So we've spent a lot of time with a company called Virtually Live in terms of recreating the tracks in CGI, creating a very rich environment, and allowing the fan to be the director. So, and that's the sort of ethos of what we want. We want fans to have the opportunity to go back. If your driver isn't at the front, and your traditional viewing experience of motorsport is you follow the leaders, you might be interested in who's in 8th and 9th, and VR allows you to recreate that in such a way where you don't need to have the traditional cameras. So we think it's a really important aspect. And what we've been working on is how do we then bring that into the broadcast environment. So we've got a lot of replays. You'll see the start of the race in Hong Kong. You'll have the replay will actually be in VR. And I think that technology will evolve, will develop, both from a consumer point of view, and as the headsets become more affordable and more freely acquired, I think there's an immersive effect there. But I also think in terms of using that technology to complement traditional broadcast can be really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think interesting on our side is what we can do in the next few years with 4K. We're working quite closely with the manufacturers. We think we can re-showcase it. There are challenges. There's the connection speed challenges and the delivery, but again, I think those barriers will be broken. I think you've got to serve it and sort of health check with certain customers about this is 4K, and you are, if you're streaming this on this service, then you've got to have the following connection speeds. But I think the advances in the volume change now, and the amount of content that's being produced with 4K production, I sort of see the 2020 Olympics as probably this. I think like the 2006 World Cup was for HD. It's suddenly just you jump forward a generation, And I think, 4K's been around a while, but I think, again, for you just got to look at customers. Well, they may have just bought a HD TV in the previous 2 or 3 years, and for them to go and buy another 4K TV or 3D, it's a gap, and you always have that lag between a period of time. Our technology teams are looking at VR quite closely. It's one of the challenges in the rights space is sometimes VR rights are kept out of agreement, so we're having to look at when we can bring them in and how to bring them in, and if it's a live experience or it's a delayed experience, or is it the journey from the bird's eye view of the player or the coach, or seen some brilliant examples of how the NBA are looking at it from courtside, where you can pick out your seats and you can get a completely different perspective. I think that's one of the key areas with VR in the comparative difference with 3D. It really is. It's about getting a very different perspective on the sport. It's not for all, but I don't think you can throw it into the same bracket as maybe 3D was. You're trying to basically create a 2D space in a 3D world, and that's where it fundamentally was a bit flawed. Right. It's about that perspective.
It's a much cheaper production than the 3D production, that's for sure. So, well, thanks, guys. We're going to wrap up now and let everybody get on to lunch. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to seeing you all next year.
Thank you, Ken.